Hi, I'm Stewart Spinks and welcome to episode 400 of my podcast, Beekeeping Short and Sweet. Episode 400, who would have thought it? And we celebrate by being chased away from the apiaries by some very heavy rain showers. It's all going to change though as we head into some warmer weather and with it, the start of the summer nectar flow. Beekeeping Short and Sweet, a beekeeping podcast for the inquisitive beekeeper with a short attention span. A beekeeper, in fact, just like me. Hi everyone, and welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining me on this rather special day as I hit podcast number 400. It's amazing to me that I've been able to build a beekeeping podcast over the years, since 2018 in fact, to the point where this little old beekeeping podcast has been listened to almost 1 million times. It's something that I feel very proud of, and also something I hope has given you some practical tips, some interesting techniques, and maybe a few chuckles along the way. I know I've had fun creating and sharing it with you. So, on to today's podcast, and what a wet week we've had. It does seem our weather is pretty muddled right now. Lots of low pressure systems rolling in off the Atlantic Ocean, bringing with them some very heavy showery conditions with a few very impressive thunderstorms. Temperatures have been pushed downwards, but when the sun has been able to sneak out between the rain clouds, it's warmed up really quickly, and our bees have taken advantage of the sudden dry and warm conditions to get out and forage on whatever has been available. Currently for me, and my bees, the one major nectar flow that is kind of happening, if you can call it a flow just now, is the brambles. Lots of flowers appearing, particularly at the Fishing Lakes apiary, and the bees are definitely on it. If you're lucky enough to have a plentiful supply of brambles in your local area, the bees will work it hard. You'll see this in your hives, nukes and supers, as that mid-coloured honey, maybe mid to slightly darker coloured honey, comes in. I keep saying it's my favourite. I've probably said it several times over the years. It just tastes of summer to me, and it's always a special crop of honey to be able to enjoy. We are moving quickly through the calendar though, and while there are still a lot of flower buds on the brambles waiting to open, there has already been a flush of early flowering brambles that we've not taken advantage of. My workload has been such that getting colonies over to the fishing lakes for honey production has been, well, a little hit and miss. More miss, if I'm honest, something I intend to rectify on Monday of next week. We have some of our production colonies over at the farm apiary, and currently we seem to be in something of a June gap there. My main concern is this June gap, if that's what it is, will turn into a summer gap, as I've not seen any other significant area of forage for the bees in that area. My plan is to move a number of the colonies back to our Norwich sites, but leave a backup quantity of maybe 8 to 12 colonies at the farm to see what forage they may find. It might just be that I've missed a significant location of forage for them, and to move everything out would only confirm to me that there's nothing there and continue to see us miss out on it. Alternatively, of course, I might end up having to feed colonies that have nothing to forage all summer long, but let's see how they fare. Elsewhere, we have the allotment apiary loaded with honey production colonies. Here, I'd like to bring over maybe another 4 colonies to push up the total honey production to 12 colonies. I find this is a really nice number of colonies to have in a single static apiary, as this will become. We did have an overload of 14 by 12 nucleus colonies here, but these have, for the most part, been moved out now, freeing up space for full-size colonies and that anticipated nectar flow. This site has always been a positive site for summer honey production, so I'm really excited to see what turns up this year. Sitting on a south-facing hillside, as it does, hilly for Norfolk, you understand, so almost flat. Anyway, here we overlook an area extending across the River Yare, the Norfolk Wildlife Trust's Thorpe Marshes, and the large area of the Whitlingham Broad. It's a wildlife haven and simply has to be bursting with wildflowers. Please. Thinking back to the fishing lakes apiaries, we are somewhat overloaded with colonies of various types and sizes here. It's really not conducive to a large honey crop, too many bees foraging a set area, so much so that I really need to move out a large number of those nucleus colonies. We have a mix of 14 by 12s and Langstroth here still, and ideally I want to maintain the site with just the Langstroth colonies. This makes it so much easier to manage each colony, regardless of size. Let me explain one of the methods that I'm using, and perhaps you could think about how your apiary is set up and whether my suggestions, my methods, could help you manage your bees and improve your summer crop of honey. You may, of course, already be very organised and have everything under control. If so, congrats, keep up the good work. But for me, I just need to grab a few extra hours each day and sort this out for good. Okay, here's the setup. This is the intended setup. We don't quite have this at the moment. For every 3 full-size Langstroth honey production colonies I have, I'll have a queen-right nucleus colony. Remember, every colony has been checked for health. I'm not too concerned if we have a little chalk brood occasionally, maybe a slightly heavier weighting of Varroa. These can be dealt with, but absolutely no signs of foul brood, heaven forbid, and no signs of chronic bee paralysis virus. With that said, let me explain how this will work. 3 production colonies on a standard pallet, alongside them a growing nucleus colony in a 6-frame nuke box. This nucleus colony acts as a feeder of sealed brood frames for the production colonies where needed. During inspections, weather allowing for this of course, I'll check the nucleus colony first and assess how it's growing. What I'm particularly looking for are frames of sealed brood. Completely sealed would be great, and if there are the first signs of emerging adult workers, so much the better. This is important because what I'm trying to do is reduce the workload of the main honey production colonies in terms of looking after brood. If I were to add a frame of eggs and young larvae, for instance, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you have and you want to get some growing brood into a hive, but young larvae need a lot of help and attention. They need warmth, they need food, all of which means adult workers in that colony are diverted from other tasks. If I can give them a frame of emerging worker brood, they really don't have to do anything with it, except get the cells cleaned out once the adults have emerged, ready for their queen to lay eggs into. The emerging adult workers will immediately add to the workforce of the full-size colony, and this will allow a greater number of other workers to head out and forage, thus increasing the honey production, hopefully. This can be repeated with the other 2 honey production colonies on the pallet, thus helping out each colony with a growing population. Now you won't always get the timing right with frames of emerging brood, but sealed brood may only be a few days away from emergence anyway, so it won't delay the process unduly. The impact on the nucleus colony is that it holds the population in check. Removing as many as 3 frames of brood in one hit may seem drastic, but with a large population of their own workers, wax production will begin to ramp up again and new frames of foundation can be introduced and will be drawn very quickly, The older frames from the main production colonies may be being used as emergency food stores perhaps, or rendered down and prepared for reuse with fresh foundation inserted, thus preparing new frames for use in the near future using the same process. As more brood is produced, the swapping out of sealed brood can continue building incredibly strong colonies for honey production, while at the same time holding nucleus colonies in check. This is really helpful in managing those nucleus colonies that are not being readied to go into a full-size hive. It's all too easy to forget that small nucleus colonies with a queen cell in them, over time, become queen-right, slowly start to grow and develop, and suddenly, having been almost forgotten, erupt with a new, eager population of workers and quickly overwhelm the relatively small nuke box that they occupy. Removing frames of sealed brood on a regular basis from these growing nukes will help manage them and prevent the inevitable end result of a swarm if left to their own devices. As I mentioned, it's a great way to remove old, gnarly frames of dirty, blackened comb, if of course you have any of these, and you'll end the season with colonies that have fresh, new brood comb filled with stores and brood heading into the autumn and winter months, giving them the very best chances of overwintering successfully. With a little help from the weather gods and a good nectar flow, these superpopulated colonies should have a huge foraging force. And you'll need to be ready with the supers, otherwise again a crush of bees in the hive will certainly lead to a potential swarming situation, best avoided if at all possible. Elsewhere at the fishing lakes, I finally set up the double brood hive for our queen rearing work this summer. Better late than never, I say. I had a queenless colony that I've united with a queen-right colony using the newspaper method, of course. It's been about a week now, so they should be nicely settled. The frame donation system that I've just explained is the technique I'm going to use to rapidly increase the adult worker population in our queen cell builder colony, the starter colony as it's known. This is the basis of our cloakboard colony setup, and I need to get cracking with this as time is moving very fast. The first queen rearing method I'm going to use is the Miller frame. It's a simple enough method that can be adapted to suit either an unwide brood frame or a wide frame, particularly if the frame happens to be diagonally wide, as is the case with most of our frames. On the morning of day one, I'll set up our cell builder or starter colony. This is easy enough, made a little more tricky only in that you do have some fairly heavy boxes to lift. So having a helpful assistant would be great, otherwise it is a simple process. We want the queen in the bottom brood box, a queen excluder between the two boxes, and in this case it's the queen excluder that will accept the cloak board. This board is just a solid piece of ply that slides into the queen excluder frame and works by blocking off both brood boxes from each other. There is a little bit of lifting here, as I said, because we need to rotate the floor 180 degrees so that the entrance is now at the back. The cloak board has sufficient space in it so that it provides a slot that acts as an entrance between the two brood boxes, with the entrance being for the top box. At this point, we insert the cloak board, cutting off the two brood boxes from each other. It's important to make sure that the top box is empty of all eggs and young larvae. You don't want the bees in that top box to be able to create emergency queen cells from their own stock. Older brood and sealed brood are fine. Frames with pollen and nectar are essential. This isn't an issue this year, as many colonies have overloaded with pollen in brood frames, so we can use those without any problem at all. The next step is to pop a sloping board against the hive so that it acts as a landing board for bees returning from foraging, expecting to get into the bottom box. It redirects them into the top box at the front of the hive. This will massively increase the population of the bees in the top box and should be usable after maybe 5 or 6 hours.
It can be left overnight, as we have done in the past, and works very, very well. The top box now appears hopelessly queenless, at least to the bees in it, cut off from the brood box and their queen below by the cloak board. It's at this point we can introduce our frame of young larvae into the top box, and in this first instance I'm going to create that Miller frame. The frames will be wired. This isn't an issue, as all we have to do is pull the wires out, which cuts through the comb, and by pushing out the lower segments exposes the remaining comb as a kind of zigzag of cells with eggs and young larvae in them. Using a pair of large tweezers, I crush down every couple of cells, leaving the third cell with a young larvae in it, hopefully, for the bees to produce a queen cell. This makes it much easier for the queen cells to be removed once capped. So if you imagine a diagonal row of cells starting at the lower pointy end, leave the first occupied cell of your choice, then crush the next 2 or 3 cells moving up the diagonal edge, then leave another cell and crush the next 2 or 3 cells again, and so on until you reach the top of the diagonal run. Now you can work your way down the other side and continue until you've worked across the entire comb section, using as many or as few cells as you like. It really is up to you. I try to aim for around 15 to 20. This frame is then inserted into the cell builder or starter brood box on the top of the cloak board setup. After 24 to 36 hours, it's essential to remove the cloak board. This is really important. That initial queen cell production is based on an emergency impulse to develop queen cells. If you leave the cloak board in, the cells may be small when completed because they will be developed as emergency cells. But if you remove the board in a timely fashion, 24 to 36 hours, the colony will switch to supersedure queen cell production and provision those cells with additional royal jelly, and you'll get much better queen cells. At this point, I like to check that the queen cells have actually been produced. There's no point going through the entire timing process only to find that you don't, for whatever reason, have any queen cells. Once the queen cells are capped over, maybe after 5 or 6 days, depending on the age of the larvae when cell production was initiated, they can be removed and placed into mating nukes, and the whole process can be started once again. At least that's my intention. With a little luck, we'll have a plentiful supply of queen cells to populate all of our mating nukes that I'll be creating towards the end of the week in readiness for them. At least that's the plan. Well, that's it for this week. For all of you who haven't yet signed up to my Patreon page, I, together with Steph, have been creating beekeeping content for many years now. And if you're looking for some straightforward, down-to-earth tips and techniques, help and advice, then do take a look at my Patreon page. We have over 1,700 individual beekeeping posts, videos and podcasts filled with useful and timely help and advice. My approach is pragmatic and calm, sometimes entertaining, but always with help and support for the beekeepers at the heart of what I do. I keep my videos short and concise wherever possible, no waffle, no flannel, just honest beekeeping advice from years of keeping bees. Take a look and join me for the new 2026 beekeeping season. It'll cost you less than a jar of honey, and you never know, there may be something there that will help improve your beekeeping. Check us out online at www.patreon.com/Norfolk Honey.